All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the No Guts, No Galaxy podcast number 149. 149. 140 mime. We are your hosts, Phil and Daeron. Today is October 26, 2016. And I'd like to say, what is going on, Mama Bear? How are you doing? Other than laughing at me because I can't say words and things. It's been a long day. All
It
right.
has indeed been
It's
a
been a
long
long day.
day, and now, just so our guest knows, Phil has decided we're going to mime this whole episode. So I hope your mime skills are up to par. But anyway, I'm doing wonderful. I'm very excited about today's show. Obviously, we've been talking about it for a while now.
Yep,
Been
yep.
looking forward to it. So yeah, first of all, happy October, and as we keep saying and mentioning, we're nearing. We're only, let's see, 5 days.
5 days
Yeah,
away. 5 years of doing this.
5 days from 5 years.
Oh, how we have gone so far. And
And I
yeah,
know. And Randall's first comment was already.
right?
Speaking of, you know what I'm thinking. Let's just cut out all the stuff in the beginning, and let's just jump right in to our special guest.
How are you doing, Randall? Long
This
time.
is, of course,
I'm doing fine.
good to see you. This is, of course, Randall Bills, managing developer. Is that your correct title?
Correct.
Okay, managing developer at Catalyst Game Labs. Of course, they are responsible for, as most of you all out there know, the BattleTech
Aha.
tabletop.
Aha.
There we go. Phil started it. It has been a
Yeah,
long day.
it has.
It's feels like a Monday, as well as Shadowrun, Leviathans, and other titles. You can see them all at CatalystGameLabs.com. We'll drop the link in the
Can I give
chat.
you a new title instead of managing developer at Cat? Can we just say Guru of BattleTech?
Some people hate that word, by the way. There's an ongoing discussion of the word guru, and many people dislike that term. But I would say it applies.
God of
As
BattleTech?
as Randall and I
That,
were just talking, he and I kind of got into the game at the same time. We're both, 30-ish years of BattleTech. Um, I'll let Randall, speak for himself, but we both came from Robotech, and then got into BattleTech. But yeah, both basically almost lifetime BattleTech geeks, nerds, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it never ends. I just went to a Halloween uh, kind of a trunk or treat thing with different group of people, and I'm sitting there going like, I don't have time to put a costume together. What am I supposed to do? And even my son is like, oh, well, you got that new BattleTech jacket, right? You can just be a mech warrior. So
Oh,
put the jacket on and throw the hat on from the Harebrained Schemes Kickstarter stuff, and instant mech warrior. So
there you go.
worked good.
Grizzled old mech boy. Except you don't. I have to
so
say, you don't really fit the grizzled part anymore.
it's gone. It was so weird. Like I tuned in to that the hyper RPG that for the BattleTech, and I was like, what the shit happened? Like, why did what? It's
Where did
I've
Randall go in
always seen you, and
Invasion of the Body
it's gone.
Snatchers?
I know, right?
Yeah, that was when I went to Gen Con. I was actually just talking about this earlier. When I went to Gen Con, there's people there that have known me for 20 plus years, and I don't have a beard, and they've never seen me that way. So it was a kind of an endless stream of, agog faces as they're trying to figure out what happened.
All right. Well,
The beards take on a life of their own, and sometimes I do fantasize about not having the beard and all the quote unquote baggage that comes with it. But now, have you gotten the comments like you look, 10 years younger and all that stuff?
Oh, sure, I got some of that, but the far more was like, where did it go? What happened? What's going on? Are you feeling okay?
I was gonna say, my wife, she's okay with the beard, just not the mustache. So is it one of those where you finally shaved and you cleaned up, and your wife was like, I sort of like this. You should keep this more often. No, yeah.
No, actually, well, there's two parts to that. One is that when my wife and I got married, at the time she actually worked in a hair salon, and so even when we were just dating, her hair color and hair length changed multiple times. And so very early on, it was pretty much, I don't get to say anything about her hair color or her hair length, and she doesn't get to say anything about my beard.
Ah, yeah.
Now, I have stretched that. There was once or twice where, I came out shaven one time and she's like, I refuse to have Abe Lincoln in my house. And then probably what most people remember is about might have been 4 years ago now. Um, that in October, November, Matt Harrett, for those that don't know, he's the graphic layout, one of our great graphic layout guys for Catalyst. And we were smack talking each other because he's got a big beard, and he started going off about how he could grow a bigger beard than I could. And so then I'm like, well, let's do it. We got 9 months to Gen Con. I'm willing to go. Let's go. And so around March or April, my wife decided to braid my beard because it was already crazy. And she took photos and posted up, and Matt was like, Uncle, I'm done. But of course, I'd made the commitment, so I went all the way to Gen Con, and it was the most insane, beastly. Like, all you have to do is type, like, Leviathan's beard, Randall, or something online, and you'll see that. And I had also decided to shave my head completely. So it was the most insane, beastly thing. And I came home, and she was like, you're done now.
No, man, you crossed the line.
Yeah, so she let me do the contest, but then once I hit it, so no, for this, as I mentioned before, and I also mentioned the hyper RPG podcast. It was church related. It's for one of the callings I have for my church.
Gotcha.
So,
well, I have a question for you, Randall. And
before, what topic are you on?
This is I was
just
gonna
a random. Okay, go for it.
And totally BattleTech centric. Now, you guys mentioned you guys both came into BattleTech via Robotech, right? And Macross and all that.
I'm not going to say I had a crush on Min May. I didn't.
Nobody did.
I was totally a Lisa fan.
No one's judging. This is a judgment-free zone. So I have a question for you, Randall. I don't. What makes, or why do you think BattleTech like latches on to us and just, I don't know, has kept with
our souls?
Yeah, or just like kept with, like, why do you think it stuck with you? Obviously before maybe you got into it from a job, but like, what is it, do you think, that just grabs us and just holds us? I mean, literally, for our entire adult
Most
lives.
of the people that we deal with, Randall, just so you know, and I'm sure it's the same with you, are, more than just a passing fan of BattleTech. Most of the people I deal with have been in it for, decades, if not around the same amount of time. Otherwise, a lot of people come in at Mech Warrior 2, but the devotion is incredible. I think that's kind of what he's getting at. Why does this IP snare people?
To you, or what? Tell us all the things.
Yeah,
all the things.
There's so many layers to that. I think one at its heart, and I mean this in the nicest way. I'll actually tell a story. Started out, so we're sitting in the FASA offices, and it was this dinky little room shared by all of the developers. So I'm in there as the assistant developer, and then Mike Mulvihill, who's the Shadowrun developer, and Brian Neistel, who's the BattleTech line developer at the time, and then Lou Prosperi, who's the Earth Dawn line developer. And we're all together. And finally, at one point, like, Lou kind of gets upset and throws his hands up in the air, and he's like, why is BattleTech so successful? I just don't get it. Why does it just sell and sell? And my first thought, as both Brian and Mike and us all kind of looked at each other, was, first of all, it's giant robots blowing crap up. Like, how can you not love giant robots blowing crap up? So at its core, it latches at that little boy in all of us in that just wonderfully visceral way that, again, I'm sitting here looking up at my wall, and I got a poster of a giant marauder blowing crap up. And so it has that wonderful visceral, and then on top of something that's so simple, you then just layer on all this wonderful storytelling that ties into the elements of characters and clashing nations. And see, I see that marauder on the shirt. Nice. But no, it's the clashing nations and the politics of it, the shades of gray that even though there were plenty of times when sometimes you'd be like, okay, the Davians are painted a little too white hat here, or maybe the Capellan Confederations are painted a little too black hat there. Um, what comes around goes around, and when a new story arc would start up, and suddenly it would flip flop a little bit, and like Lauren, I think, did such a brilliant job in the Capellan Solution novels in portraying what had always been, the poor kicking boys of Lao, and suddenly like they were compelling. Sun Tzu was really cool to read about, and you kind of got into his head, and so I think all of these tie in together to create this that you're absolutely right. I mean, it latches into you, and it just never lets go.
Absolutely. Now, sorry, just clicking around, checking out all the fan, like basically, I feel like there's a few IPs and franchises that have done what BattleTech and Mech Warriors done. It's almost like Star Wars on a smaller scale. You just get, or Star Trek. I was trying to think back at the what it was about it that really spoke to me. And I think you're right on the visceral level. When I first walked into that game store, as I've told people before, and I saw that Warhammer on the box cover, yeah, it was just, well, first of all, I recognize it from Robotech, but it was also giant robots, lasers, autocannons, missiles, and all the things that the boys like, and explosions. And then, with Aerotech and moving forward, it just, lots of toys. But I think what really made it so that here I am 30 plus years later and still love it just as much. And as I told you, I'm embarking on my reading the novels for the 20th time or something. I think it's the deeper aspects of it, which is basically, there's somebody just mentioned him in chat, the YouTuber that did that video on BattleTech, like what is BattleTech? And basically he was, describing it as a cross between Game of Thrones and giant robots, and I agree. There's all the politics and the just amazing storyline and the history and the characters that develop. And while it wasn't all perfect, we've had you on the podcast before, and there's things that you mentioned with Tabletop, especially, that you'd change or whatever. Looking back, hindsight.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. It's still beautiful, man. It was like the people that were involved, I think it was just, lightning in a bottle, and everything just happened for this title. I think it's also, mechs or whatever, are popular worldwide, but I think BattleTech stood out as being the kind of mech that I identified with, which is just humongous, stompy mechs that weren't, and I'm not jabbing other types of mechs or franchises out there, but they weren't super zippy fast flying back and forth. They felt like 50, 100-ton war machines. And maybe that's an American thing. I don't know. I've heard it described that way before, but I feel like, I just identified with it. And yeah, it's been a love affair for 30 something years.
Well, it's absolutely that case that, talking to Jordan about how he envisioned it is that he, again, fell in love with Robotech, fell in love with these giant mechs, but also then as he was thinking to himself, one, he doesn't, he can't make Robotech, so how does he make it different? And then he also realizes that a more Western style of storytelling isn't teenagers saving the universe. It's, the fall of Rome.
Yes.
And so really that's what it was. It was take these giant things that are super agile and fast and being piloted by teenagers. And again, I'm with you, loved Robotech to death. But then you twist it into walking tanks and kind of a more adult themes of the fall of the Roman Empire, which is what the Succession Wars are. And so that sculpted it a lot better for a Western audience.
I was gonna say the thing that caught me. I was 12. Yeah, I was 12 when I got my first novel. Was just the cover artwork. I mean, 12 years old. As cliche as it is, you judge a book by its cover. And I saw lasers. I saw this robot, and that's how I got into it. Just sort of a chance, thing. But not to go down further this rabbit hole, but as an adult now, do you read the novels or go through the stories, and do you have a different perspective, or what is your perspective now reading them? You know, do you envision more of a I guess an adult perspective? I don't know. Like, how is it, you know, shaped how you look at
That
BattleTech?
that's kind of hard to say because there's so many different layers to that. There's the fan, there's the little boy inside of us that is still there, just loving to get out as often as they can. There's an adult storyteller. There's the business side of it. There's the professional developer side of it. So there's a lot of different layers, and in a lot of ways it can actually be incredibly hard to separate them. Like my poor family and kids will be watching a show, and name a show whatever it might be, elementary or whatever, and I particularly if it's like something it's really well done, it's got a lot of good plot development, and I will suddenly pause it. And I did this for Bryn. I'm just starting to do this with my next youngest, Rihanna, where I'll pause the show and I'll be like, "Where's it going to go?" And they'll roll their eyes and then they'll try to figure it out. And so it got to be a point where Bryn could tear down the stories incredibly well. And part of that is that I love good stories, and BattleTech as a whole is such an amazing story. And like I said, sure, there's each of us have our particular novels we love best, or some novels that didn't really work for us, but as a whole it's really amazing. And so you tear those stories down and you figure out why are those stories working, or why don't they work. And so it's hard for me to unweave all those various elements. That definitely I look at something a lot different now than I would have as a kid, but in a lot of ways I'm still looking back at, hey, 30 years later this grabbed me, so there's something important there that I need to make sure that I'm still capturing every time I'm doing that.
I love that exercise that you do with your kids. I do that internally when watching shows. I've actually never heard anybody else talk about doing that, predicting storylines. I feel like a lot of, you know, the stuff for shovel fed or whatever, and again, I watch some of them, so I'm not judging anybody. Very predictable. You just, it's a basic story method that they use, and you know where it's going, you know where it's going to end. But yeah, I agree with BattleTech novels because, like I said, I've been reading these since the mid '80s, early '80s. I feel like the novels have grown with me, in that when I was young, there were certain things that were grabbing me back then, and it might have been the mech combat. But as I grew older, I felt like I was able to appreciate different elements of it. Maybe got more into the story arcs, or the character arcs, and the politics and the subterfuge and all the the other stuff. That's one thing about them. I feel like the books don't lean on, they're not Michael Bay. They don't just lean on the mech combat and the explosions. There is actually character development and stories. Now, of course, these these a lot of these novels written in the '80s, and there's issues with that. But it's nostalgic for me, and they're near and dear. But I've literally read most of the novels, and we were mentioning this too, up to the Dark Ages, over and over and over again. Personally, I'm probably on, like I was saying, my 20th time through that. I start off with Decision at Thunder Rift, and I just go full bore through the series again. And I'm 80%. I'm reading it on my phone here. I'm 80% through Decision at Thunder Rift again. But I love it. I'm as captivated by this story now as I was 20 years ago or 30 years ago or whatever.
And I think what I've done personally in my life, and we've talked a lot about this, Daeron, is my military experience and my worldly experience that I, in a very short period of time. And then I've taken that, and when I read or I watch any movies or read anything about military, I guess it's just sort of second nature. I project that when I'm reading it, but also too is all the other sci-fi or fictional stuff like Game of Thrones and stuff. You take those, and I guess this sort of leads into I guess a question of BattleTech and moving forward in the novels, and creating the next, I guess, step for BattleTech, and I'm and oh my god, that thing is gigantic, dude. Like him and his bowl of like coffee. But yeah, no, we're moving on to the topic of the novels, and you guys are re-releasing the novels in ebook format or EPUB, and it's available on Amazon Kindle and compatible devices. And you guys are releasing. We've got the Thunder Rift, Blood of Kerensky, which Blood of Kerensky is where I started the novels at. Wolves on the Border, 36 titles in total.
So far,
like for me, I'm not gonna lie, I like having a physical copy. Like I don't like. Is that just me? Is that just weird? I like the smell of books. Is that weird?
Well, real quick, no, that's not weird at all.
Just making sure.
I just dropped the link in there for the Battle Shop on Battlecore, the website. If anybody's interested, that's the place where you can buy both. Randall, I think you got your push to talk. You can buy all of the novels that are up right there. They are in EPUB format. So like I was saying, I just got Thunder Rift for my phone. I do have it on in book format as well. But my Kindle, I'm in love with it on my phone. I can read anytime, anywhere. There's 36 Legends titles out right now that are available on the Battle Shop or in the Battle Shop, including the ones that Phil said, those series and a lot more. And more to come. Randall, you said you're going to try and release how many?
Well, all told, there's over 100 BattleTech novels in the entire series, and so we're just slowly working through. And some of this is it's actually a lot of effort. There was the
Sure.
whole legal side and getting it all squared away with Topps, who's the owner of the entire non-electronic side of the IP, and then there's working with the authors, and so there's that whole side of it. And then there's simply the side of, some of these files when we originally dig them up were on 3.25-inch drives and old software that doesn't even exist anymore. And so you'd have to get special software that can crack that software open to then be able to
That's
export
amazing.
it, to then be able to run it through 2 or 3 things, and then you got to
Man,
review it. And so it's actually been a pretty long road to get here. And we wanted to do it. The community deserves it. That this library of books deserves it. But it just takes a while. So we've been rolling them out. We try to get one new one every week. Doesn't always occur that way, but we're gonna keep powering on them until they're all out.
that's awesome.
Now, speaking back to your comment about the physical books. Now, I noticed the video is way behind where I'm speaking, so I'm going to try to point this, and hopefully I will do it right. That you mentioned that you love a physical book more than
I've seen your room, and
so
yeah,
that's
Oh, Randall.
that's just the fiction novels that I have, and
That's
then I
amazing.
have all the and then the games are all over on that side, and then I got a ton of theology books and research books upstairs, and you name it. So
So you love physical books as well.
I love physical books as well. I mean, it's funny. I love electronics in so many ways, and PDFs are brilliant for gameplay, and particularly for research. Like the invention of the ability to search through 100 PDFs for that one line that's going to mess your research up on
Yep.
a given subject is the coolest thing ever. But that being said, when it comes to reading, I have the hardest time not wanting to curl up on the couch with a good physical book in my hand. Now, comes in the business side of things. We have no way of knowing if we simply published these books again, or if we spin up a 3,000-4,000 print run, is there going to be 3,000-4,000 people that are still going to buy it? Are the stores that are going to carry it, the Barnes and Nobles and all the ways you used to be able to sell these, are those going to be able to carry it? And so those have been questions that, and that it's expensive.
Gotcha.
Now we have, and so to date, that has stymied those efforts. Now, print on demand has come an insanely long way, and we are working really hard to, the first part of the process was getting all of these transferred over into electronic EPUB formats, and we've got a good, third of the line, and we're continuing on that process. And now that that's well underway, we're now looking at can we figure out, and we're pretty close to it, how to offer these up on as print on demand. And for those that are really nuanced and know their books really well, you can tell the difference. But most people, the print on demand has gotten so good, most people can't actually tell the difference between what was printed for mass market and what was print on demand. And so, fingers crossed, by the end of the year, we might actually be able to start offering some of these up as print on demand and then just rolling that forward. Because I know there's a lot of people that, hey, I decided to sell them and now I regret it, or the flood came and took it, or my mom sold it, or whatever it was. So, there's a lot of people that would love to get these again, and we're definitely working on that.
Have you guys, with HBS's success through Kickstarter and stuff, has that been something that you guys, some type of crowdfunding or Kickstarter to where, someone could technically buy one or a series of books? I mean, is that, I don't know if that's an option.
It's
Um,
figuring out the demand, right? Like,
yeah, it's always about figuring out the demand, and then Kickstarter has all other issues in crowdfunding. Don't get me wrong, I love crowdfunding. I've personally only done it once with the Duke, one of our tiling games, but I have, on the side watched and been a part of a lot of these. And again, the Harebrained Schemes BattleTech one, but there's there's other issues at work that don't always allow that to go as easily as you'd like it to.
Understood.
we don't know what we don't know. Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is, as far as the digital copies, I think they're extremely convenient. I read, 20 minutes before I go to bed, or when I go to bed, I read for 20 minutes before I pass out. And it's hard for me when I got my wife in there to have the light on and read a book or whatever. So I find that the digital copies extremely convenient, and it makes it so that I can read, a couple books a month or whatever, and just read on it whenever I get some spare moments. But I'm also a person who loves the hard copy. I mean, I love the smell of books and just being around books. So yeah, I mean, I would be one of those people who would absolutely buy a print on demand. I think that's awesome. I had no idea you were looking into that. I do know we talked to you a few years back, and you were talking about, this was before the EPUB started releasing, that you wanted to do it. So it's awesome to hear that that is going well, and that there's a potential basically for getting the book's hard copy. What was I gonna say? Oh, I tried to get the books in hard copy. Phil has a lot of them. I
have all
unfortunately
of
got
them.
rid of most of, through the years growing up, moving around, living on my own. I lost a lot of my stuff, including the Battle Droids box set, which kills me. But
Oh, that's hurtful, man. Sorry.
big time. But the books included, and so I decided, well, I'll just go get them on eBay. But have you checked like Amazon and eBay? Sometimes those old books, the originals, and I'm not talking amazing condition or hardback, obviously, they go for hundreds of dollars.
Oh yeah, no, that some of those are well, and the really funny part is that some of them, like the Sword and the Dagger, for me personally, just isn't that good of a book. But
Oh
it's
no.
just it's one of the very first, and so it's the hardest one to get a hold of. So
Are those
I
fighting
totally
words,
get
Phil?
it.
No, I'm in total agreement with them.
Okay.
It's and it's funny because
I still read it though.
someone recently asked us, it always sort of comes up. We have a thread on
Where should I start?
where should I start? And I'm like, start at Decision at Thunder
man.
Rift.
Thunder Rift.
But
Yeah.
once you get into it, get Sword and the Dagger or read it, but read it just for the information and the background in the story. That's important.
Sure,
The-
absolutely. But
the-
yeah, I would never point
it's-
them there as the first book
It's
to go
so there was points in time when I was reading it and I was like, does the author understand this, like, scale and perspective was off, and I was like, I don't even know right now. Anyways, but
Well, to be honest, if you go back and you'd know, since you're just starting to reread those, that the original, God, maybe 6 or 7 books, particularly the Decision at Thunder Rift, that they were still getting the aesthetics of BattleTech down.
Yeah.
So in Decision at Thunder Rift, there's points where mechs are like skidding along the ground and really doing stuff that you don't really do anymore. And again, they were helping to craft what would eventually become the aesthetic through the novels.
Yeah.
So, often I read that and it just makes me smile because I remember reading that at the time and watching that evolution.
Yeah.
I talked to William H. Keith Jr. Is that the full name? Yeah.
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 Several years ago. Actually, I think, did we interview him?
Yes.
I think we
No, we were going to, and
Yeah.
that email he sent,
did.
he
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, there was a lot of
he just
interesting.
he just didn't even like really. He was like, people still really read these novels basically, and it
Yeah.
was like, I don't even remember the stories. He was like, so I'm probably not going to be a very good guest. And
I think there's pros and cons of working with a lot of different authors in a series. I mean, obviously, Star Trek, Star Wars, all these various IPs do that. And I'm fine with it. I can live with it. I know people have their quirks and different styles, and I can live with it. I enjoy the stories regardless. But one thing I was going to bring up, Randall, is that you're not only the managing director of Catalyst Games, but you were also an author, right?
Yeah,
How many of those
written
books are yours?
5 of them.
Yes,
One,
indeed.
two, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I think 5 sounds right. Yeah, two in pre-Dark Age novels, and then 3 Dark Age novels.
so can I ask you, moving forward? So you guys are doing reprints. Is there discussion about continuing the storyline and or
New
will
novels
hold
you're
on
talking
will
about.
yeah will canon include Dark Age? Like, what are your thoughts on that entire thing? Are we going to see newer
Well, remember,
novels?
he wrote novels for the Dark Age.
Well,
so-
I know, but it's always an interesting topic of saying some people consider it and some people like, you
Randall's
should
used
just
to all
cut the
this.
hand off and
Oh yeah, sure. No. Um, well, one, I think there was multiple questions in there.
There was.
So I'll try and parse them out. First of all, almost everyone wants to know about when are we going to get new novels. We published one new novel last year, or no, actually earlier this year. And it kind of comes back to when I was talking about the print on demand and bringing back the legends, that it is incredibly hard to make a business of releasing novels unless you have the backing of the chain stores, meaning like Barnes and Noble, and having that good distribution chain. And it can, the success and the just wild extreme conversion over into EPUBs has made publishing physical books just more complicated, has made everyone a little more leery about it. And so it's just been a long process, because you have to forge these relationships with these stores that are going to be willing to carry it. And so, we've said many many times over the years, hey, we're still working on this, and a lot of people are fine, and they'll stick with us because they've been with us for years and years, and they know that sometimes it takes a while, like Interstellar Ops, but we eventually get that thing out. um but others, can rightly so get a little frustrated that, well, man, why does it take so long? But again, it's just these relationships and these businesses can just take a long time to forge.
Well,
Now,
not to mention just writing a new novel, right? That takes time.
oh well, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And yes, it does take time, but you can tap multiple authors, and you can do things like, have 4 all new novels just sitting there ready to go, which is what we have right now for BattleTech. Just waiting for those final steps to get into place. Now, for those that follow Shadowrun at all, we've actually published, I think we're up to 7 or 8 physical novels now. And part of that was because we had launched Shadowrun 5th edition. And so we were, um, that was part of the push on that side, was to get those novels out. And so we've gotten that track record, we've built that up, and now we're, finally able to then show them, hey, we made this work, we can make BattleTech work as well. So there's a few more meetings to have and a few more T's to cross, and unfortunately these meetings could be over tomorrow, or they could take another 4 months. But we're still dedicated to this. Again, hopefully you can tell by the process that it took just to get the legends to come back, that we are, completely committed to trying to make this happen. So yeah, like I said, we have 4 novels that are done and in the can, and just waiting for us to get those last business parts and those relationships we need to start moving forward.
Okay, I have a question about those 4 novels. But first, somebody in chat said, "Why are you wearing a Shadowrun shirt?" And the reason why is because Catalyst also handles Shadowrun, the role playing game, as well as he just mentioned the novel. So, like I said before, CatalystGameLabs.com, or you can go to the Battle Store at battlecore.com as well, and you can purchase those things. So that is why, and that's another awesome title. And Hairbrain does the video game versions, obviously. Another great IP with a great story. Now, are you able to say anything about these? I didn't know you had 4 novels sitting there. Can you say anything about them?
No,
That's
not really.
amazing. Of course not.
No, not really. I think John Helfers is our novel line editor, and I think if I just threw some stuff out there without him knowing what I'm
Totally
doing and
understand.
get a little clearance, he might get a little little miffed at me. So that's one of the questions. The second question is, um, Dark Age, and is it canon? And for us, it's canon. We completely understand that there are some people that just wasn't their cup of tea, and I kind of go back to I still run into players that never really moved out of 3025. They didn't even like the clan invasion, and all they do is play in that era. And so we have always taken, and it's actually one of the reasons why over the last 3 or 4 years, no, well, and actually, man, going all the way back to FanPro days, um, one of the things I really wanted to do was say, while yes, BattleTech always has an arrow moving forward, and we're always trying to expand the universe forward and grow it, but we have 1,000 years to play with, and while there's plenty of books that cover all those years, there's also plenty of time periods where there's more stories to tell. And so, when I did the historical War of 3039 book, man, God, I think like 15 years ago now, it was the first time that we'd ever done a BattleTech book that basically was a big meaty source book about a war that was in the past. And now, of course, we've got tons and tons of it. 3 or 4 years ago, we went through a whole Star League and just fleshed it out with arrow books and more field manuals, and so there's lots of great stories to tell there. So if Dark Age isn't your cup of tea, that's awesome. There's still lots of other eras that we still go back and still tell stories in. Um, and then I think the final bit of your question was, are we ever going to move forward beyond even the Dark Age
Yes.
where we are kind of right now? And yes, so and I was actually just talking about this with all of our freelancers. So BattleTech it's such a giant property, and it can be so huge to manage that there are simply times where you kind of run into lulls where it's kind of a huge collective taking your breath. I always go back to like after the clan invasion was done, you get to the end of the Blood of Kerensky trilogy, and it's 1992. And from 1992 until about 1996, almost nothing significant happened. It was some nice, great little stories, but there weren't any big, really pushing forward story arcs. And it's because, in a lot of ways, if you ask them, they'll tell you once they got to the Truce of Tukia, then they weren't really sure how to go forward. Where were they going to take the really large story arcs? And so every once in a while, you just kind of get that. You get to the end of an era, and suddenly there's kind of a lull. And so we've been in kind of a lull as we kind of wrapped up a lot of the stuff that we wanted to do in covering Dark Age, and we kind of hit a lull for a little bit and published some other stuff and did some other stories, and now we're just starting to ramp up again. And there's been a source book called the Ill Clan source book that, again, for those that have been knowing about that and kind of waiting for it, it's one of the pivotal last books that will wind up a lot of the story threads that have woven through the Dark Age. And that's back on track for releasing next spring, and we're really starting to develop where we're going to go from there. And another reason why we kind of had this pause is that part of the reason that Jihad in particular, kind of flipping from Dark Age back to the Jihad, one of the reasons the Jihad was very different and in a lot of ways really difficult to do is we didn't have novels at all. And so developing and pushing the story from source books only was a very different way than BattleTech had ever done before. And even though I'm really proud of what we did with the Jihad, and I thought it brought a lot of different new style and flavor for people to enjoy, I think at the end of the day, BattleTech works best if the major storylines are pushed forward via the novels, and then the source books follow up and flesh things out. And so hopefully all of these businesses and all of these relationships that we're forging have reached a point where we can start not only bringing new novels back, and I would like to see new novels back in the 3025, or heck, I just had a conversation with Brent about and actually this was sorry Brent Evans is our art director. He came up with this great idea of, okay, well, what if you, instead of necessarily doing straight up 3025 stories, what if you rolled it back to the end of the 2900s and you start telling some stories about the parents of the primary characters. So just how 3050 was the children of the original 3025 era. So, it's Victor versus Hans and so on. Go to Carlisle's Commandos and tell that story. And can we actually get Bill Keith to write that story about the Grey Death Legion when it was his father, and how did the Carlisle
Yeah.
Commandos? And so that got me super excited. I was, bouncing in my chair. So I still want to hit those eras, but then hopefully we can actually get back to using novels to forge the storyline completely past the Dark Age into a whole new cool era. So yeah,
I,
lots of elements in there we're working on.
I think that sounds amazing. And one thing I think I've made the distinction is reading the novels from start to the end, not Dark Age included. You see this sort of escalation of force, if you will, on how battles became bigger. And some of the smaller stories to me, which is really captivating, right? Thunder Rift and even Blood of Kerensky started ramping it up to where battles got bigger and bigger and bigger. And you got to that section, and I remember it's like, well, okay, so Victor, they go and they kick ass, they come back. Well, what's next? Like, where do they go? And that was one of the things where I was like, okay, yeah, I can see sort of what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to jump ahead and start something new, right? Because we've done it already. You've had the invasion, you've had the, formation of Star League again, and all that. So, to me, I always feel like some of the best novels are the side stories, if you will. Just
the smaller scale stuff.
Just that average Joe, if you will, and you'll grab pieces. They'll grab pieces, and you'll hear little implications of stuff going on in the universe, like. But it'll just be like referenced sometimes, like, oh, this happened on such and such planet or whatever.
It's like Star Wars,
Yeah.
the original Star Wars, where they reference the rebels stealing the plans, and now you got a movie coming out, next month or a couple months about that whole story. I feel like there are so many references in the original novels that you could, like people are saying in chat. I mean, you have my wallet. If you do the series on Carlisle's Commandos or whatever, any of those, I do like the early ones. A question I do have is, how far back have you considered going? You were talking about like the year 2900-ish or whatever.
You mean for novels?
Yeah. How far back would you go for new fiction?
Oh, the sky's the limit. I think for the initial ones, I would definitely probably want to go back to, like I said, Brent mentioned the Carlisle's Commandos about 6 months ago, and that's really the more
Oh man, that would be so good.
the more I've read it, just sit cogitating in the back of my head, the more I've thought, like, man, that's absolutely. If we go and do a historical thing, that should be one of the very first things that we do. But after that, the sky's the limit. I mean, speaking of things that need to get done, haven't got done yet. I still have a third novel for the Founding of the Clans trilogy to write someday. So there's just so many great stories, and that I think that's kind of goes all the way back to that very beginning you were talking about why does this story so captivate, that we've 100 plus novels and 400 plus source books and you know 50 plus million words. I think we're actually pushing up towards 100 million words,
That's
and
insane.
yet we can still find amazing stories to tell. So it's just awesome. I
Well,
just love
It
sort
it.
of
is.
what I think you've had uh, a hand in, I guess, Harebrained Schemes and what they're doing, which is they're not telling the main story of what's going on in the universe. Instead, they're saying, you know what, we want to steal a piece of the pie. Let's go up to the periphery. Let's and to me, that sort of goes the same thing, Daeron, which is they're telling a small story. It still has big implications because it's part of the bigger picture here, but it allows you to basically start anew, if you will, with possibly new characters and new story arcs and I don't know, just something like that is really intriguing to me. And of course, BattleTech. That would be cool, though. I was just thinking, you could just basically go to Grayson's father. How about Saint? And of course, you mentioned it. I was like, oh no, shit, that's funny.
All right. So obviously,
So, sorry, just to
no, go ahead.
clarify, I'm seeing in the chat somebody was talking about the 400. Couple of things. One, I was including all the box sets and all of that, and then two, I forget that my shelf has all of the, like the tech readout shelf is an entire shelf that includes every like revision and revised and updated, and so yeah, I think some of those kind of cheat a little bit and maybe inflated larger than I was saying. So just to clarify.
Well, it's still hundreds, right? I
I
mean,
mean,
it's ton. I did link again there the Battle Core site. You can see everything that's for sale. Tons of stuff. I mean, it's who doesn't like. I mean, you know, in a lot of ways, those TROs back in the day were like daily reading for me. I just love, all the rule books, the source books, the readouts. Um, and
as
you've got all that record sheets, hex packs. You got tons of stuff there for the tabletop, as
Oh
well
yeah,
as
absolutely.
the re-release of the novels. Is there anything what's happening right now? Well, first of all, the novels, we were talking about the artwork and the original artwork in the 80s. The novels, you're redoing the cover work, right? The artwork.
yet.
Well, for the legends, really, all we've done two things. For a few of the books, we actually did all new art. Most of the art, we were actually just diving down deep into the archive and pulling stuff out and releasing it that way. When we actually get to printing them in print on demand, whether we'll keep that archived art or move to having all new art on every print on demand, that's a question we haven't asked yet or answered yet.
So, what is the status of? I think we've covered the novels, even though we could, Phil and I could easily talk about this for another hour. We're not going to keep you. The tabletop. What is the status now? You've been. I don't want to say you're a con man because you're not, but you've been going to Gen Con. You've been going to a lot of these conventions, and I know you're working with other titles, Shadowrun, etc. But what is happening with the BattleTech tabletop right now? I know there's been some minis, some pictures going around of these new minis that you're working on potentially. Where are we at? What do we have coming up possibly in the next year or whatever?
Well, the minis are always painful to discuss.
I know. They're so
We
beautiful.
Well, they're just difficult. Miniatures are just difficult for any company to do. And when, I kind of joke and say we can, trip and fall out of bed and stand up with a book in our hands. We're really good at making books. And every time we've attempted to stretch ourselves and make something new and different, there's been stumbling and there's been blocks. And, for those that, followed the travails of Leviathan, which is a alternate 1910 setting miniatures game that we did, that dang game was as cursed can be, and just endless problems. And it was all surrounding the miniatures. And part of it is that we're never quite satisfied with just good quality. We always want great quality, and I swear it felt some days like Leviathans was going to kill us because we just went so over the top with the miniatures. And so for BattleTech, it's the same thing. We're constantly trying to improve the quality, and so under FanPro, we did the first plastic miniatures at the latter years of FanPro. First plastic miniatures since the third edition box set, and they were pretty crappy quality. But it was, it's what we had at the time. It's like, yay, plastics are back. And then we came out with the next set, which is the current box set, as well as the Lance packs, and hugely jumped up the quality. And now we're in the process of, we want to jump the quality up even a lot more. And so that's just a long process, and feels like we're almost there, but that's about all I can say on that front.
So those are basically prototypes that we've been seeing, right? The pictures.
Yeah, yeah, the pictures and photos, absolutely. Those are rapid prototypes, and then you take that and did it work, and then you got to send it off to the actual manufacturer, and then they have to, then you got to pay for a mold and do the mold testing, and there's just a whole series of insanity that all piles up around minis. For the rest of it, we've actually had a really awesome year for BattleTech publications. We published the first Succession Wars book about 6 months ago, that had a lot of one of the things I always try to do is, obviously the first Succession Wars was covered in so many different ways throughout all the original house source books, and then the house handbooks that we did. But every time we try to do it, I always try to uh, bring a new perspective or do something that's never been done before, never showed before. And I think my two best examples on that is when Chris Hartford and Chris Trosson wrote the Operation Klondike source book. That details that they had done had been covered in, like, oh my gosh, 7, 8, 9 different source books through the field manuals and the original Clan and Jade Falcon Wolf book and novels. And so how do you do it in a totally different way? And so what they did was came at it from the tone of the book and the style and the presentation was also wonderfully different, that it was so evocative in a whole new way. It felt like you're reading the story for a brand, for the first time.
Right.
So that's one way to do it. And then another thing for like the handbooks was, for example, we put maps all through the ages. So we actually showed what the founding of a particular house looked like in map form, which had never been done before.
That's amazing.
And so with the first Succession Wars, we did the same thing. There's a couple of really cool things within there that we've never really detailed before. And Herb did a fantastic job, and it's gotten nothing but rave reviews. I really think it's definitely one of the better source books we've done in quite a while. And then we've published Combat Manual Mercenaries and Combat Manual Curita, which are both for Alpha Strike. Now, for those that don't know what Alpha Strike is our kind of fast play rule set. It takes a 8.5 by 11 BattleMech record sheet and shrinks it down to a 2x5 by 3x5 card. And so you can play out, if you're doing a company on company, that's easily 4 to 5 hours of normal BattleTech play, even if everyone at the table knows what they're doing and is not sidetracking themselves too much. And in Alpha Strike, you can play that out in under an hour. Or you can flip it and jump up to, almost a battalion and run a battalion in 4 or 5 hours. So it's a really good, it doesn't replace BattleTech. It's just a different, great way to get in that quick hour of your BattleTech jonesing you need when you don't have a whole evening to play. And so
or a couple days.
or a couple of
A
days.
month.
Well, I ran every 2 weeks or so. Doesn't always work out. I do a BattleTech game for about 3 or 4 hours with some friends, and usually I just do a quick small scenario, and I kind of built a scenario, and I just totally overshot and built it way too big, and we played for 3 or 4 hours, and we're like barely halfway through. So I'm like, well, throw the because I have like a double deck setup where it's a 4-foot by 8-foot plywood board underneath, and that's what all my HeroScape sits on. And then I just have some wooden blocks around the edge, and I throw a board on top of that, and that's when I do other board games, role-playing games, and so on. And so luckily I'm like, we're not going to finish that one. Throw the top board on, and we'll get back to it in 2 weeks. But the two combat manuals are basically field manual styles for the Alpha Strike. And they're set 30-50 era, so it's lots of great fodder for whether you're doing 30-25, the Succession Wars era or the combat the Clan Invasion era, and it's all full color, so it's some gorgeous art and some gorgeous minis in there. And then the last two things that we've published, one was Interstellar Operations, which I happened to mention earlier. That was one of the most painful projects that I've ever had to work on. It took years and years to get done, and part of it was the sheer scale of what we were trying to do. We just bit off way, way more than I ever imagined it would require, and it killed multiple authors and multiple developers. And but finally got that published. And then the last book that we published in August, September, was Campaign Operations, which kind of rounded up the whole thing. So it's 7 total rule books that started with Total Warfare 10 years ago. And that one I really love because it finally is a updated rule set for building and running your own combat command, whether it's a mercenary or it's a house unit. It took Ben Rome and Paul Sajardin were two authors that originally crafted the war chest system, which was kind of a build and run your campaign light rules, and it would end up being so popular as Chaos Campaign that it actually got published through a lot of different books. And he kind of compiled it all together and fleshed it out and gave us kind of like the premier deluxe edition of that. There's other different types of campaign play in there, so it's just really the one-stop shop for any type of more longer term campaign play you want to dive into. So that's kind of everything that's out and you can go and grab. The stuff that we're working on now, probably the biggest thing, and you guys are getting an absolute sneak peek because we have not said one word about this.
Dun dun
You had me
dun.
on the edge of my seat. Look at you. You pause right there. I hope
Well,
everybody's listening, guys.
well, I paused because my window. There it is. For some reason, my window suddenly went dark, and I'm like, "Did I
I'm
just
like
kill
leaning
this
forward.
something?" No, I mentioned it a little bit in that hyper RPG thing. So it's actually interesting looking back, and I actually did up a little sticky note right here, just to look at it because it's always fascinating. So the BattleTech Manual, which was the very first rule book published in like 1987. And then 3 years later, the BattleTech Compendium, published in 1990. And then I didn't realize this, but for clockwork, for the next 3 times of 4 years each, is when each of the next BattleTech rulebooks were published. BattleTech Compendium Rules of Warfare, Battle, BattleTech Master Rules, and then BattleTech Master Rules Revised were each like 94, 98, 2002, and then even on to Total Warfare was 4 years later at 2006. I don't think that was ever that was a goal. It just kind of ended up being that way. And so Total Warfare now has been around for 10 years as the core rulebook for the game. Uh, you know, what, 3 times as long, almost 2.5 times as long as anything's ever been done before.
Sure.
Now, there's a lot of people that there's so much to love about Total Warfare, and but there's some huge Achilles heels embedded in Total Warfare. And part of that is that going into Total Warfare, there was no way that I could justify to my bosses and to myself when I'm wearing my business hat that I could do a new, Aerotech book or a new Aerotech box set or some of these other expansions of rules. And Aerotech had Aerotech, and then Battlespace, and then it had another Aerotech book, and then it had another Aerotech book revised, and each one of those just really didn't do that well, unfortunately. And so my goal in Total Warfare was, well, screw that. I don't want to miss any chance of people being able to enjoy a new rule set. So I just crammed every conceivable thing that's in the BattleTech universe into one rule set. And so that eventually grew into this concept of, hey, I got a rule for that, which is, again, I joke that if you're You want to fight a fight with battle mechs and battle armor on a sinking aircraft carrier, and then get off of it and get onto the drop ship and fly up and do a combat drop back down and all of that. We now have rules for all of that. But the primary Achilles heel then is that if you just want to play battle mechs, there's a chance that you could have 4 different rule books on the table. And that sucks. That is a huge Achilles heel. And so about a year ago, I came up with this idea of, okay, there's so much to love about what we did in Total Warfare. The clarity of the rules, the crazy back and forth with the community to look at the errata and ask them questions, and how are you playing this, and what is this actual rule, and how should that be ruled, and so the Total Warfare line of rule books I still think is the most clear so far as how the game is played. But the problem is again, if you're not perfectly memorized every single rule and you're trying to find that one odd rule about BattleTech play, it could be hidden somewhere in amongst all of these other rules about large vehicles and support vehicles and aerospace fighters and dropships and battle armor and infantry, and so it can just be annoying. And while some players absolutely play it all, I think most of us, for a good chunk of the time, we're just let's throw some X on the table and get playing.
Yeah.
And so we were working on a new rule book. In fact, I was just watching, while I was in this chat, there was a sample layout of some of the pages that showed up. And sorry, I had my page kind of blink on
No
me,
problem.
and that's weird. And the notification that the editor has dropped some more chapters in to start the layout process. But we've been working on this rulebook for a while. So yeah, I'd come up with the idea about a year ago, and then put up a proposal and sent it out. And then Ray Arrestia, who's my right hand man that helps me make everything work, because I wear so many hats that I just can't concentrate on BattleTech all the time, and so he helps keep things absolutely moving forward. He's just awesome at that. But he had simultaneously already gotten some guys working on this project as well.
Without talking to you first, it was
Just really it was him and some of the best of our volunteers that really kind of work on like the master unit list website, that were like, hey, let's go ahead and do like a chapter so we have it as a proof of concept to then show Randall to say, hey, should we get going? And so then it was one of those great moments where I'm like, hey, I think this would be a really awesome thing to do. And Ray's like,
That's great.
Here's a chapter. What do you think about it?
Yeah.
And so it took us a while to get going. But the last little while we've been going round and round and round on it. And the last of it's being, like I said, the last of it's being reviewed. And so the whole goal on this book is to create we're never going to please everyone. You never can in this type of thing. And there's certainly a situation where, well, why did you take that piece of equipment or that rule out of TAC Ops and add it into this new one and not this other piece? Because I really wanted this other thing. And so hopefully the goal is our experience and hitting all of our demo agents and all of the volunteers and looking at the boards and looking at where the questions are asked and trying to create a volume that's, here is the book that 95% of the players have 95% of anything they'd ever want when they're playing BattleMechs. So, all the stuff that I had to strip out because of room, artilleries and minefields and all the things that all the old rule books used to have, they're all now back in and folded in. And so the goal is, hopefully as you come in and sit down, you're going to be able to grab one rule book and go to the table and have almost anything you could ever possibly want BattleMech related, but with that same clarity that kind of came out of the Total Warfare style of books. So that's, we've got the cover art in that I was kind of showing off, and in the coming days and weeks, I'll start posting up on our Tumblr, the Catalyst Tumblr, and start talking about the design process and how we're doing it, and kind of mixing some of the stuff up even more of the presentation on it. And it's called the BattleMech Manual, is the actual title of the book. So, well, actually, I can kind of. Well, no, I can't show that yet. I was about ready, like, maybe I can show you. No.
We were inches away from seeing it there.
Yeah, I might get in trouble on that. But,
no worries. We'll have you back.
Yeah.
So you're
absolutely. So yeah.
So the best place for people to follow along to get news on that is your Tumblr?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I tend to post up there every day, if not every other day. And now that, beware that the Tumblr is for everything that we do at Catalyst. And so it might be for a new board game we're working on. It might be for Shadowrun. It might even be just me talking about, hey, I had a good role-playing session last night, and here was kind of some of the story elements that came out of it. And so, I'm an equal opportunity gamer, and I play and share everything that I do. But there's plenty of good development on the BattleTech side, sneak peeks you can catch up there.
All right. Well, I dropped the link of the Tumblr in chat there, so you guys can get that. Now, there's a lot of. I have a few more questions. We've already kept you well over the time that we said we are going to, and like I said, I think Phil and I could talk to you for hours.
Sure.
But
I need to get. I would actually like to get back to just like a once a month on with you guys. I think that.
We'd love to have you.
Yeah. I just need to flog myself to make that happen.
Absolutely. So I'm getting a lot of personal questions submitted right now from our viewers, and they want to ask you all kinds of technical questions. We're not going to throw those onto you tonight, but if somebody does want to ask you questions, what's the best way to kind of reach you? Is there an email, or is it like Twitter?
Actually, Twitter works really well. I try really hard to answer all the Twitter questions that get popped to me, but also just, Randall at CatalystGameLabs.com. Emails can take a little longer because I get,
a ton of them every day.
I get so many emails.
Yeah, I hear you.
So sometimes I can get a little backlog, so that might take a little longer. But specific questions, usually through Twitter, as long as they're, kind of short and succinct, I can usually power through those real quick.
All right, so just so you all know out there, I'm not ignoring your questions or anything like that, but like I said, we've already kept them over time. A few follow-up questions. We did mention that a lot of people ask us, and they do regularly, where should we start with the novels? Where, they're faced with 100 novels, and where do I start? We get the same question in regards to tabletop. Would you recommend Alpha Strike as an entry level for the tabletop? Would you not? Would you say, where would you, if somebody's interested in the tabletop, which lots of people are in our community, where do we send them?
That can be a tough question, and it's unfortunately made tougher right now in the fact that the introductory box set is currently out of stock. So that, makes it difficult to go, hey, just go get the introductory box.
So eBay.
Yeah. So it's wending its way through the process of getting a reprint. Anytime you go overseas with a big box set, it's almost a half a year worth of it. And if you just kind of miss your timing just a little bit, it kind of piles some extra months on there, unfortunately. If it was out, though, between the two, it really kind of comes down to the type of gamer that you are, your experience. If you have never ever played a miniatures game, then BattleTech can be ridiculously intimidating. So absolutely, I would say go grab the Alpha Strike rulebook and 2 Lance packs, and you're good to go, and you're off and running. If you're a little more seasoned, you've played a couple of other miniatures games, then absolutely I could see, pointing them at the box set. And the nice thing about the box set is, we like to call it the best deal in gaming. There is just so much ridiculous value in that you could play years worth of games just out of that one box. So often it's, if you yourself want to get into it, it's just kind of asking yourself, hey, have I played a miniatures game before? Does that look interesting? The other thing you can do is up on the BattleTech.com website, there's free quick start rules both for Alpha Strike as well as for the standard BattleTech play, and both of them are 12 pages or less. So you could almost do a side by side, just take a quick look at them and go, yeah, that seems a little much for me. Or you might look at it and go, this is the coolest thing ever. I'm diving right in, up to my gills. So you just, you need to do a little bit of testing. It's kind of like when I have new people show up for gaming, and they're like, yeah, I'd love to game. And then I'm like, okay, what was the last game you played? And you're like, oh, I played Sorry. Well,
Monopoly,
then,
yeah.
yeah, then let me get Dixit, or I played Dominion. Okay, well then, I'm going to get Crossfire, Dead of Winter, pull out a whole bunch of lot more in-depth games. So it's really kind of gauging their experience to ensure that what they get out of it is the best we can give them.
My tabletop sessions usually started on Friday night after everybody got off work, and they lasted until Sunday. And there were a lot of relationships that suffered because of it, but we had a good time.
Well, and you were talking about this sort of new BattleMech, rule book, and I feel like that sort of hits the nail on the head, which is we've talked about this is how much time investment. Like, okay, let's start up let's do a tabletop session. Well, last time I played, it was like, well, what if we wanted to do this? And your game master has to know all the rules, or you have to go searching and you have to look, and that was one of the things that I felt like was sort of I guess what a hindrance would be, and like just letting sort of the flow of a match, sort of a tabletop session go. But a part of me is like, I liked and I like Alpha Strike, but a part of me also says there's something, I don't know, it sort of integral to like having to fill in every single bubble of your mech on the armor and structure, and having to roll your dice and having to keep track of heat and having to there's something fun about that as well.
Hell yeah, not something fun. That's what the fun is.
And so like I'm sort of torn of like, yes, your time is precious, but sometimes I feel like you just need, just have a few beers, know that you're going to be there for hours, make sure pizza's, available, and just have a long night, and
Phil will be over at your place in a couple hours. Have the beer and the pizza ready.
Right.
No, I absolutely. Like I said, I am I'm an equal opportunity gamer of almost every stripe. I'll play almost any type of game outside of, the aforementioned Sorry and Monopoly. But sometimes I just want a quick little game, and I'll grab a quick little card game. And other times, I'm setting Twilight Imperium up, and I'm gonna be here for 8 or 9 hours, and that's awesome. So
I did have another question for you, and this is BattleTech, card game. Can you tell us a little bit of history about the card game? Because I got into the card game back in the day as well. Is that something that you guys have thought about expanding back into?
Not so well. One, the trading card game, the mechanisms and all that are not owned by. They're actually owned by WotC. So we wouldn't actually be able to. We'd have to either go back and license that from them, or do something completely new. We're not. Um, I actually enjoy the game. I still have Smoke Jaguar missile deck, and my Rasselhag tank deck, and so I still pull it out and play it now. It was a very fun game. But the other thing that I can say we are starting to want to do, and we've started to do it with Shadowrun, which is just to do other tabletop games set within this universe. Do a little Solaris dueling card game, which
Somebody just said Solaris mode in chat, so there you go.
Yeah, so here I'll kind of just.
That would be awesome.
So give me a sec here if I can hold this up without hurting myself. So, for example, I have this play test that I'm just starting to play test. Let's see. You guys I don't know if you can see that.
I see a Marauder, yeah.
Yeah, so this is actually 3 cards that make up 1 card that give you the various elements of speed, combat, and defense. And so we are starting to work on that. Absolutely. So,
Wow.
Solaris dueling card game. $20-25, you pick it up, and it's a great way to jump into that. And then after that, we're looking at big, robust board game. So those are also elements that, yes, we want to do the novels, and we want to do these other things, but the BattleTech universe is so awesome that of course people are going to want to experience it in different ways when they're in a different mood, or they have the people that would be perfectly willing to play a tabletop game set in such a compelling universe, but maybe not so much miniatures for them. So those are other avenues we're absolutely exploring.
I was gonna say I just pulled out I have a box of cards. Here's the Rules of Engagement Clan book. This is the quick reference. It's got the king
Just keep in
crab
mind that
jumping.
Randall and I can't see it
Oh
until
yeah,
there's a delay.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's all good.
To me, it's there's a
Oh,
few
yeah.
there's a few games out there like and they're not trading card like more of like Hearthstone. And
Gwent.
to me, oh my, like seriously, talk about crack. If you guys or if someone did a up to date sort of BattleTech sort of version of that,
Yeah.
You will have
something
a lot of wallets.
and
thrown at
expect
you.
whether it's. I think it would be fantastic. I think it's from a market standpoint and gamers. I think electronic sort of PC whatever would
Well,
probably
with
be the.
Hearthstone, with Gwent, those kinds of card games are
Dude,
very popular.
I it would be fantastic. I like I don't know. Like a part of me is
So was that your personal wish list there, Phil?
yeah, I was hoping he'd be like, well, it just so happens.
Just so
So,
happens it's coming out.
Well, the problem with Hearthstone is seeing as how it's an electronic version of it is that it comes from being a 35-year-old property that's been so successful across so many different mediums, is that it's divided up. So we don't actually have access to the electronic rights.
Right.
Gotcha.
What Piranha got from MechWarrior Online and what Jordan and Harebrained Schemes got, that didn't come through us.
Yeah.
No.
Now, wonderfully, I worked all the way back through to MechWarrior 3 and I was Microprose. And for the longest time, they treated the tabletop as, the redheaded stepchild. They wouldn't give us the time of day, no respect at all. And what I love most about MechWarrior Online and Harebrained Schemes is just how much respect they pay to the canonicity and to the heritage and the legacy, and how much they bring us on board to look at how can we mesh this together and how can we make it as an authentic BattleTech experience as possible, and so that's has been absolutely wonderful. But again, for any other electronic related things, it's always just so much more complex.
So
Well,
Russ.
we love the lore that you've been doing for MechWarrior Online. So please continue. Love those stories.
So I was gonna say Jordan or Mitch or Russ, and if you're watching this, just
Come on,
saying,
guys.
card game like Hearthstone, but
Work
BattleTech,
with Randall.
you
Let's make this
literally
happen.
people. It's money. They would throw like because I mean it would be a perfect filler time. Like oh my, like I said,
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
I would love to see it as well.
We're
love
gonna
to see
gun
as
for it,
well.
I think, is what Phil's saying.
oh my
Um,
gosh.
That's okay.
Speaking of Harebrained, and we mentioned Hyper RPG, their role playing game and their tabletop. I want to get your opinion on that. First of all,
I'm jealous.
yeah, like that is the most awesome tabletop. It is huge. The size of the mechs. I have multiple questions with this. Number one, it's just what is your feeling on that? Could we ever possibly see a tabletop of that scale happen officially? And number two, right along with it, is 3D printing. Have you considered anything with 3D printing? Like we were talking about minis, and I don't want to touch on anything that I shouldn't here, but is there at all the possibility of, for example, Catalyst maybe selling the files or something like that so that people could print their own minis? I don't know the legalities there, but people are doing amazing things. Obviously, Jordan did, or whoever did the minis for Hyper RPG, quote unquote minis. Your thoughts on all of that? Because Phil and I are both extremely jealous of that tabletop and those minis.
Well, there's many questions in there, so I'll try to parse them out. One is I love what they're doing. Now they clarified in that RPG stream, so in case anyone else has that, there's absolutely nothing canon
Of course.
about what they're doing. But they are simply having the most brilliantly fun time wedding the tabletop game with the role playing game in an interactive way, and streaming it. And I love it
It's
because
genius.
I love the experiment of here's this new streaming technologies, and sure, it's so much easier to show that interaction on the electronic side. How do you do it on the tabletop side? And I think they're doing a great job at how that works out. And then
Yeah.
the first time I watched them, and they then hit that hunchback in the right arm with a large laser, and they pull it up and put it back there and pull out a blowtorch and start melting it. And the first thing was just the pain of, no, you can't do that to a mini. And then the second thought was the financial side of it, 'cause I know how much
Oh yeah,
expensive
they're
that
expensive as
is.
shit. Yeah.
And then the last point was I had to pause the stream because I was laughing so hard because I just thought it was the coolest, funnest thing ever. Like, oh,
Yes,
they're actually drilling holes into the mech when it gets hit by autocannons. Like,
it's
how
awesome.
awesome is that? So all of that is just awesome. I just love it
Yeah.
to death. And they've been trying to get me on for a good long time now. The problem is they do the broadcasts on Friday, and that's my normal Friday night game night. And so I'm just like, but I got all these other people that want to play games. So, I've been having a hard time making that work. I'm still hoping I
You need a
can.
clone, Randall. You need a clone.
Yes, that would be awesome. I would definitely love one of those. So then the second question is, we absolutely have been looking at, how can we do larger miniatures? How can we just sell the CAD files in whatever formats needed so people can do their own rapid prototyping? And again, there's so many questions. There's lots of legalities, and there's a lot of questions to be answered, but absolutely, we are looking at that. Absolutely, I would love to see it happen. And so, we are pushing on that. It's just a case of, do we get there? Can we get there?
Sure. Understood. Well, this has been a very long podcast. I think we're actually going to dump the rest of the content we had for tonight, and finish with Randall, and we'll be done here. But thank you so much for coming back. And absolutely, we are excited, and we'd be thrilled to have you back as often as you want to, once a month, every other month, whatever you have time for, or when you get your clone situated.
Well, we'll see him soon.
Oh, we are
Yeah,
going to see
we're
you.
going at MechCon.
Yeah.
Absolutely, can't wait for it. But no, I'm absolutely looking forward to again, maybe just do it every 4 weeks. This
Sure.
now, hopefully not each one of these is quite this long.
No, well, that'll be
Uh,
the upside, is that they'll be shorter.
yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, lots of questions.
Probably
on
not.
your
No, it'll probably
engages,
we'll
but,
probably be talking then.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, then we'll have to be better at it. But no,
Yeah.
actually, tonight actually ends up working pretty well. The kids are well ensconced in what they're doing, and wife's still working. So
Well,
these
we
nights
appreciate it.
end up working pretty good. And I love talking BattleTech. I love talking with you guys in community. So it's all good.
We can tell you are one of us.
I am the world's biggest BattleTech fan. There is no doubt in my mind.
Well, I just say gamer. We all play a lot of games, and so it's just,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I actually, what's been really awesome is my son has, he grew up this giant gamer group coming up through high school, and then there were times when I was running like a 12-person D&D game, which was the most insane thing imaginable. But we'd have, 8, 9 boys playing, like a 9-player Eclipse for 8 hours. It was just glorious.
That is so cool, man.
And now my daughter, who's 4, and now, most of them have all gone off to college. And so now it's just this little nugget of them left.
Sure.
But my daughter's 14. And she's a gamer, not quite as insane as Bryn was, but she still loves gaming. And we just started having her bring over her friends. And so we're actually on our third game night. And the first game night, man, 5 excited 14-year-old girls doing geeky stuff was the loudest thing I don't even think, like, I've been to concerts that were more quiet than that. But it didn't matter because they were playing games and they were loving it. We were
Yeah.
downstairs playing games. We just love it. I love it for the human interaction. I love it to do it with my kids. I love it to do it with the friends. I'm a giant game pusher. I will push it on anyone.
That is awesome. My almost 6-year-old daughter is Natasha Kerensky in the making. She loves the mechs. I lost all my mech models. She took them all. So I guess I got more stuff I got to buy if I want mint condition. But anyway, yeah, it's awesome. And I love that about you, that like I said, that you are one of us. Now, speaking of MechCon, what are you going to be? Some of these people in chat are going to be there. What are you going to be doing there? You were at the launch party.
Launch party.
In
Yep.
San
Yeah,
Francisco.
absolutely. Yeah. No, that was a blast.
I bought one of your shirts. Are you going to have more shirts? Are you going to have tabletop stuff there?
We hope to is the best I can say at this point. We're still trying
Sure.
to figure it out because it's in Canada, and so you're bringing product into Canada, and how does that work out? And so, absolutely, I would love to have brand new T-shirts. At Gen Con, we had a. Am I wearing that thing? Oh no, I'm not. Unfortunately, I wore it yesterday. We did like a kind of a that athletic style of T-shirt where it's gray and it's got like a big logo of the school on it, and it was the NAS athletic shirt with a new reimagined image of the Shadowhawk on the back,
Nice.
and it just blew out. Like it sold faster than any BattleTech shirt we've done in a good number of years. So we hope to have that up there. Hope to have dice up there and some other BattleTech games, and then some, hopefully some other cool stuff that we can be.
Are you going to be
showing
running
off.
any Alpha Strike or anything like that?
Absolutely. I actually, I totally blanked whether it's Alpha Strike or the standard game. I think it's Alpha Strike, but we absolutely have some of our demo agents that are going to be there running games the whole time, and I'm going to be doing Q&A sessions. And apparently there's going to be kind of a round table with Jordan and Russ and
Yes.
me,
Yep.
and all sitting down and doing that. And I'm trying to very carefully rope in some other names that we can hopefully bring along as well. So
Is that what you volunteered me to
should
do,
be
Daron?
fantastic.
No, you.
Is
What,
that
rope?
is
doing
that, is
what?
that is that what you like? Kids, you were like, oh yeah, you're gonna be going
No,
around and
you're gonna be
talking to
walking the
people.
floor with a
Oh, okay.
microphone. But
I don't know.
yeah, we're definitely looking forward to that roundtable, kind of the history of BattleTech and MechWare, I think, and man,
The
that's just
four
gonna be,
horsemen all together.
yeah, it's
like
basically it's going to be amazing having you guys all there. We're already this people in chat saying I'll be there, and I'm going to talk your ear off.
Yeah, no, I love it. Can't wait to go there.
Well, we're looking forward to that. Actually, last week when we thought we were going to have you on the podcast, I wore my my Battlemaster schematic shirt that I bought off you.
Nice, awesome.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to it. So everybody out there, if you're going to be, whether you're going to be attending MechCon, you can go up by and say hi to Randall, check out their tabletop stuff. You can check out catalystgamelabs.com as well as, I just want to make sure, yeah, battlecore.com as well. Put the links in chat. So, wow, that was a hell of a show, Randall.
Awesome. Glad to be on here, and I could kind of feel my own pent up excitement to sit and talk with you guys. So that's why I kept looking at the time, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not done. Let's keep talking. Let's keep going. But yeah, it's actually reaching time to be getting kids ready for bed. So
This is almost like a round table with
probably should be
Russ.
wrapping it up.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So thank you very much. And yeah, like I said, guys, everybody out there in chat, we're not getting to the rest of the content. We will be here next week with a podcast, usual time, usual place, and we'll cover MWO news and stuff like that. But once again, Randall, thank you for making the time. Thank you for being here. We'll talk to you about future shows. And
absolutely glad to be on. Thanks for everyone that came by to check us out.
Yeah.
Awesome. Phil, you want to take us out?
Yeah, I just want to say again, Randall Bills, thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure. And of course, we get to hang out with you very, very soon, albeit with a little less beard. But it is all right. We'll be all right. Quick shout out to all of our listeners, our new viewers, all of our new subs. And of course, if you'd like to help support NGNG TV, make sure to click that follow button. Check out all of our information down below. We will have this podcast up on YouTube and SoundCloud as soon as possible. This was your local No Guts, No Galaxy MechWare podcast. Signing off for tonight. This is Phil.
And this is Daeron.
Until next time, Mech Warriors. Boom. Nailed it. Nailed it.